This is the SaveHeart Stories podcast. Real-life stories of lives saved and changed due to sudden cardiac arrest and the availability of life-saving AED devices. Because one life lost is too many, these stories matter. Here's your host, Dave Fritzsche.
Welcome to the SaveHeart Stories podcast, where we talk to real people about real events, where automated external defibrillators, or AEDs, were used to save lives, and unfortunately, where AEDs were not used and lives were lost. I'm your host, Dave Fritzsche, and I'm here to shine the light on the fact that sudden cardiac arrest, or SCA, is the largest cause of natural death in America. It is both a serial killer and an ongoing health crisis, claiming the lives of more than 365,000 people every year just in the United States alone. That's over 1,000 people per day. We're here to tell SaveHeart stories so you understand how to recognize sudden cardiac arrest and to remind everyone how important it is to have a plan and an AED if FCA becomes a reality in your hometown. As we begin, I'd like to ask a favor. If you like this show, please hit the like button where you're watching or listening, or subscribe for future shows so you won't miss another important episode. This helps get the word out that this show is actually something worth listening to. Thanks very much for helping me, and let's get started. Today's guest on the SaveHeart Stories podcast is Dale Wakasugi, founder and owner of MyAED and CPR Solutions in Woodbury, Minnesota, and, most importantly and incredibly, a two-time sudden cardiac arrest survivor. In fact, Dale's experience has led him to dedicate the rest of his life to educating people about sudden cardiac arrest and how to take immediate action during an SCA emergency. His company provides training in cardiopulmonary resuscitation, or CPR, and the use of AEDs and supplies life-saving AEDs to individuals and organizations across the U.S. I've been fortunate enough to get to know Dale over the last many years, and we work together for greater AED placement and use, including the new frontier of outdoor AEDs. He is both an inspiration and a friend to many, including me. Dale, welcome to the show, and thanks so much for being a guest on SaveHeart Stories.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Well, I smile when I talk with you because your story is so inspirational. And again, I've gotten to know you very well over the last few years. I know my audience is interested to hear about your story and what you're doing today. Would you mind just going over some of the details about maybe your first sudden cardiac arrest and how that inspired you on your mission today?
Sure. I'd be happy to. And just to start, just to let your viewers know, I was in athletics my entire life from when I was a child, 9 years old. I was a three-sport athlete in high school, played baseball in college, non-smoker, non-drinker, and I developed heart disease. And so that was kind of my background. I lost my father at age 53 to cardiac arrest when he was jogging out in the country. So that brings me to today. So it was December 13th, 2007. I was officiating a boys varsity basketball game at Fridley High School up here in Minnesota. And with 5 minutes to go in the game, without any warning, I went down with sudden cardiac arrest. Several bystanders came to my rescue, including a 16-year-old high school student at the time who had just learned CPR in her health class 3 weeks prior to that evening. She came out, they did 2 rounds of chest compression, CPR, no response, and they put an AED on me, one shock, and that's what brought me back. And so they found out later what caused the cardiac arrest was a block that I had known about in my left anterior descending artery, or what people refer to oftentimes as the widowmaker. Right on the apex where the vessel curves to go down the side of the heart, there was a hunk of plaque that broke away during my officiating, and it caused my heart to go into cardiac arrest. They went in there upon my survival in the hospital, and they put in 3 stents into that artery. Everything checked out fine. There was no long-lasting heart damage, tissue damage, and they said that over time I should have a full recovery. my stents opened the vessel back up, and they said, at some point you can go back to doing everything you did before this, including refereeing. And so I kind of took that to heart, and I went back to refereeing right away. I did a return visit to the high school that I went down on just to thank people that were involved in my rescue. And that was just a few weeks later. Well, I officiated for another 3.5 years. And on November 26th, Thanksgiving weekend, I was refereeing a high school basketball game, a tournament to start the high school season. And I went down again. This time, I had an internal defibrillator that they had put in my chest after the first cardiac arrest, and that's what saved me the second time. I went down. This time was a little bit different because I remember everything that happened. The first one, I don't remember a thing. The second one, I felt it coming on. I remembered everything. I felt it coming on. I was getting dizzy. I was seeing double. And I was trying to clear my head, and I remember standing down at the baseline on the court there, and then all of a sudden I knew I was going down. So I remember putting my arms out because I knew I was going down, and then about halfway down, the lights went out like a light switch, and I had my second cardiac arrest. Well, a few seconds after I hit the ground, this internal device charged. It recognized that I was in VFib. It charged and shocked me, and of course everything's on video in game. My arms go flying like this and my body jerks and stuff. And that's what brought me back. The athletic director on site at the time had run to get the AED. They knew my history actually. And so they were making sure that they were prepared. She ran to get the AED. And by the time they came to me, I was already waking up, coming to from my internal device. So, after that event, it just became too risky, not just for myself, but it became worrisome, I think, to my partners. And I didn't want to cause that kind of effect on everybody. So I basically retired that night from officiating that I had done for about 13 years up here. And so it was a passion that I had. I loved it. I missed it forever. It was hard to get over. That was something I really, truly had a passion for. And then that's sort of what brought me to today.
Well, I've heard that story or variations of it before, and I tell you what, it never gets old because it's so inspirational and remarkable. And as you reminded me, it's a different situation in that you had an implantable, the second event. But let's go back to that first event at Fridley High School. And it's, by the way, it's just amazing this happened both times reffing basketball, so it's probably a good thing.
I know. I'm a slow learner.
No, I don't think so. But unbelievably, I know you were asked by Medtronic to give a speech at their Christmas party up in Minnesota, and you recognized the young lady who at the time, I believe was a high school junior, did you say?
Yeah, she was 16 years old, junior.
16 years old. Mm-hmm. She had just gone through training at her high school, I believe, right?
Right.
And so so you went down, you don't remember, probably people told you, you went down, and she recognized the fact, since she was just trained, that not only was it an emergency, but you might have cardiac arrest. Is that how it happened? And did she grab the AED?
Yeah, it was really it's really kind of an interesting story. She is one of her sister is her twin. So her sister was cheerleading that night, and I remember her telling me that she was sitting in the stands with her mom, sitting sideways, not even paying attention to the game really. And her sister was down there cheerleading, and she said out of the left corner of her eye, she saw me in the far corner of the gym go down, and she immediately knew something was wrong. She got up. She sprinted down the bleachers, and she said she was skipping like every other row to get to the gym floor. She ran across the gym floor to where I was, and she said she was running so fast that she slid into me with both knees. So she slid into me with both knees, and she said when she got there, she wasn't sure if it was seizures or my heart, because I was seizing at the time. So she said I was banging my head, so she put her hands underneath my neck to support my head, so I wasn't banging on the floor. And then she said all of a sudden everything just stopped. I kind of took a big gasp, and everything stopped. Then they knew it was my heart. So she started CPR immediately, and then somebody ran out of the gym to get the AED. And oddly enough, the AED that they ended up with, the person ran down the hallway right by the AED, right outside the doorway of the gym. He ran down to the office and grabbed the AED, and then brought that one back. And so they put it on me. She said they continued with CPR. They shocked me one time, and that was it. I was very, very fortunate.
And paramedics arrived on scene approximately how long afterwards, or what were you told after you came to?
I'm not sure how long they arrived, the paramedics, but there was a fireman in the stands as well as 2 nurses. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because when I went back to Fridley a few weeks later to kind of thank everybody at halftime, I officiated a game as kind of my return. And I remember meeting one of the firemen, and he came up to me and he said, "I just want to tell you, you're the first male I've ever kissed," because he was the one that was doing mouth to mouth. Right. And right. So, the response was quite quick. My save took place from the beginning. 2 rounds of CPR, chest compressions, and no response, and 1 shock with the AED under 3 minutes. And so I'm convinced, honestly, and I talk about this all the time when I do teaching, is that time is critical with cardiac arrest. And that night for me is why I came out of it neurologically intact for the most part. I had some short-term memory loss. I don't remember a thing past halftime until the next morning when I woke up. That memory's gone forever. I just don't remember anything about it. So that's just something that I'm never going to get back. But they got to me very quickly.
Remarkable. Thank goodness for the young woman who had just been trained, and that the school had AEDs, because that was 2013. Is that right?
That was 2007.
Excuse me, 2007.
Yeah, 2007, and then my second one was in 2010.
Okay. And, 2007, I've been in the industry, as you have, for many years. Yeah. I was in it since 1999, and not a lot of schools in 2007 had AEDs. But it was remarkable that she was trained and that someone else ran and grabbed the AED. Now, he or she sounds like they didn't know the first AED was closer, but they went and got the AED.
They ran by the first one.
But as you say, the CPR that was performed on you kept your blood flowing, which is critical, until the therapy from the AED was there to shock you back into a normal rhythm, which is just unbelievable. Taking that as the remarkable story that it is, how did that then inspire you to do what you're doing today?
Well, that's really what prompted me and motivated me into getting into the business. I was in pharmaceuticals and biotech my entire career, 22 plus years. And when this happened, and I lost my dad, I got involved and interested in heart stuff. I went to school to be an athletic trainer because that field had always interested me. But when I lost my dad at age 53, and then I had what I had, I was almost the same age. I was 49 years old when I had my first cardiac arrest, and that's what inspired me to get into it initially part-time. And then as I got into it more and more, I started to see the potential, and I started to see the good that it was doing out there in the general public, and also how I felt about it. It was a very rewarding, I've been doing this for quite a while now, and from the AEDs that I've placed out there under the general public in many, many states across the country, I worked with my brother-in-law in the Pacific Northwest, and between him and I, since 2009, we've had 21 saves with the AEDs that we've sold to people that we know of. We don't hear about everything all the time because of HIPAA and things like that, but that we know of, and just knowing that, one saved life made it all worth it for me anyway. I would have done this regardless. If we could just save one life, and we've been very fortunate that we've saved so many lives with the AEDs that we've placed.
And those people are fortunate to have you pay it forward, as it were, from your
Yeah.
experiences to do that. And again, now it's rubbing off on people like me that have come to know you over the years. And even though we're both in the industry, it's just a testament to you to take that near tragedy really into triumph in the local communities that you serve, to spread the gospel about the fact that sudden cardiac arrest is a problem, number one, how to recognize it, how to prepare for it, and to make sure that more and more AEDs are placed in the schools, in the communities, in organizations, even in people's homes. And I'm sure it's very rewarding for you to, as you mentioned, be that beacon for the customers and communities you serve, and to save lives that you've done. That's
Yeah, exactly. I was really honored in 2009 to be invited to be a guest speaker at the Medtronic national their holiday celebration that they have every year. It was telecast worldwide to 50,000 employees at the time. And I made a statement at that time in my speech that I made a commitment that I would place as many AEDs in as many public places as possible and teach CPR to as many people who will even listen, just anyone who would listen. And I made that kind of personal commitment at that time, and I still stick to that to this day, and that's really my goal, and is to place AEDs out in the general public in as many places as possible. And now with the kind of the interest now of taking these AEDs outdoors because of the outdoor cabinets that we have, the climate controlled cabinets that we can leave them out year round. I really believe that's going to be the next kind of the next step in AEDs, and that's getting them outdoors, because it took a long time to get everybody, or a majority of people, to get them indoors, and there's still a lot of room for growth there. But the outdoor venues, especially at the high schools and athletic programs and just the general public to use, is huge, and we're I'm glad that I'm getting involved with you with SaveHeart, and that we can start we're just really tapping the surface now of this outdoor market, and I think that's going to be the next generation of AEDs.
Well, I agree, and again, it's lucky to work with people like you to help enable AEDs, life-saving devices, into these new areas, because as you and I know, and unfortunately far too many people know, while awareness of AEDs is increased, and you talk about things, like the Damar Hamlin save situation that many people saw on Monday Night Football, and that's all great news. Number one, that he was saved first and foremost, but that it enabled more awareness. But unfortunately, as we both know, the survival rate of of sudden cardiac arrest hasn't changed, hasn't improved all that much. It's still, according to most experts, roughly 10% or even lower in some cases around the country. And that's because AEDs aren't placed in enough places, including outdoors, including in the home, especially. And people don't take action like the young woman did during her first save. And I'm glad you brought up your excitement about continuing your mission and outdoors, because I was going to ask you, since this happened 17 years ago, the first episode, right? And then again 14 years ago in 2010.
Yes.
Here we are in 2024. And I wanted to ask you what's changed in your mind, just in general, about sudden cardiac arrest, maybe collaboration between manufacturers and trainers and distributors such as yourself and others. What gives you hope now for the future that we really can impact positively that survival rate?
That's a great question. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen in the last few years anyway is awareness. I think there's a lot more awareness out there. AEDs have been out there for a long time, but just people that weren't aware of them. They didn't know what they were. They were afraid to use them. And even to this day, until somebody actually touches one, and a trainer, for example, and turns it on and off and kind of see how they work, they're afraid of them. I didn't even know what they were before I had mine, and so I was almost 50 years old before I even knew what an AED was, or cardiac arrest. I think awareness is probably the biggest thing that has occurred in the last few years, because of some celebrities like Damar Hamlin from the Buffalo Bills, and LeBron James' son went down with cardiac arrest, and have brought a lot of awareness to cardiac arrest. Michael Jackson passed away from cardiac arrest. Although his was more drug induced, there's not a lot they could have done for him, most likely, but there's a lot more awareness, I think, and so in the pharmaceutical industry, when I was in it for as many years as I was in sales and marketing, there were times where you were not a welcome person in people's offices sometimes. I have never, since I've started selling AEDs and teaching CPR, I've never had one person tell me, I don't want to hear about those AEDs. Just get out of here. I don't want to hear about them. Everyone's interested because they're life-saving. I mean, you're right, Dave. 9 out of 10 people that have cardiac arrest don't make it. I was very, very fortunate. I speak at high schools quite often, and I was at this one high school, and it was it was a private school, and there were a lot of math whizzes in this class. And so I said, hey, who can do some calculating for me? I said the national survival rate is 9% nationwide for surviving a cardiac arrest one time. I've survived it twice. What are the percentages or the odds? And these kids got all their calculators out. They start calculating, and this one kid raises his hand. He says it's less than 0.5% to survive it twice. And so that really put it was already in great perspective with me. And then I feel so fortunate that I'm even here to talk about it. And that's why that's really what motivated me to go out there and do what I do now full time, placing AEDs and teaching CPR to as many people as I can. And that's how I, like you said, have been paying it forward or paying it back to communities. And I'm very passionate about it and love it. And so that's what makes it even more fun.
Absolutely. And can I ask what advice you have for others that maybe, don't know about cardiac arrest or don't know about AEDs, or maybe people in position to enable programs like that? What kind of advice would you share with others?
Well, I think my biggest advice is if you ever get a chance to take a CPR class or training, do it. CPR, it costs nothing to learn. It's easy to learn. It's just knowing how to respond to certain situations like a heart attack versus a cardiac arrest. I always make it a very big point in my CPR trainings to make sure that people understand the difference between a heart attack and cardiac arrest, because there is a difference. One's plumbing and one's electrical. And you can't resuscitate somebody with cardiac arrest without that electricity. And that's why so many people die. Where a heart attack is a plumbing issue, and they're usually awake, and so you don't really need an AED with them. And so the other point I try to make with people is if you just narrow it down to the bare bones, just know when to use an AED and when not to. And so, but yeah, it's easy to learn. It doesn't cost anything to learn CPR. And so if you get a chance to learn it because you could save a life. The statistics out there even support that when you do good CPR and use an AED, the survival rates for people that go into cardiac arrest that you respond right away to, the survival rates upwards to 80%, yep. Where without, it's less than 10%. So we know they work. We know AEDs and CPR work. It's just getting people to be confident enough to respond to do it.
Absolutely. And while CPR by itself almost never will save a life,
right.
Deliver that needed electricity, as you mentioned, that an AED provides. AEDs, again, are really the only thing that can stop someone suffering from sudden cardiac arrest, to stop their quivering heart and reset it to a normal rhythm, as you well know all too well.
Yeah.
Dale, I just, as we wrap up, I can't tell you how nice it is to know you, to talk with you today about your experiences, and to have you share your amazing story with our SaveHeart Stories audience. How can people find out more about you or contact you and MyAED and CPR Solutions?
Well, in 2017, I got brave and I went off and built a website. And so I do have a website now that people can go to, just MyAED and CPR Solutions. Just go to myaedcpr.com, and all my information is there. I sell AEDs all over the country, out in the Midwest, in the Pacific Northwest. I've got accounts in the Southeast. And so because of technology, we can do a lot of this stuff like this, Zoom, video, virtual calls, or on the computer. And so I sell all over the country. And so if people are interested, distributors work a little bit differently than most products that have sales teams. The AED industry, there aren't really sales teams per se, but a lot of distributors and sub-distributors like myself. And just get in contact with somebody like that, and they should be able to help you out.
And lastly, your advice for someone or an organization that might be thinking about installing an AED or another AED, maybe in the outdoor world or in a new location, that hasn't done it yet. What would you say to those people or organizations?
Well, we know that there's an increasing amount of cardiac arrests that have occurred since COVID in particular, because it does go right after the heart. That virus goes right after the heart. And many thousands of kids go down every year outdoors. And so if you don't have an AED outdoors, I would highly suggest you get in contact with myself or Dave, and we can walk you through. You leave these outdoor units are climate controlled, so you can leave them out in inclement weather like in Minnesota, where it gets freezing cold and it gets very hot in the summer times with humidity and heat. But you can leave these units out 24/7 year round, and they're monitored, they're camera monitored, and so you don't have to worry about someone just walking off with it, because it'll notify the right people if they do. But there's so many kids that have died playing basketball or football. There was a high school in the Pacific Northwest just last year. A kid went down at the state track meet, and they had to run and get the AED from the building, and so they just put in an outdoor one right in the center of their sports complex, right in the dead center where the football field and track and softball fields and tennis courts all surround. They put it right at the concession stand, right in the center of the complex. And so because time is so critical, you have to get to that AED quick. And so having those outdoor units are going to save a lot of lives.
Yeah, it really represents the importance of having that 3-minute rule of going from the victim wherever they are to the AED and back within 3 minutes.
Yes.
Well, Dale, again, I want to thank you, and I want to thank our listeners for listening to SaveHeart Stories. You can hear more SaveHeart Stories at www.saveheartstories.com or wherever you stream your favorite shows. And to learn more about SaveHeart products and services, or to contact me directly, please visit www.saveheart.life. Until then, on behalf of Dale Wakasugi and myself, our message is be grateful every day, and look forward to talking to you and seeing you next time.
This has been the SaveHeart Stories podcast with Dave Fritzsche, AED industry veteran and founder of SaveHeart by Heart Nation. To learn more about how outdoor AEDs can keep your community safer, call 312-953-6928 or email Dave at saveheart.life. Proudly made in the USA, SaveHeart's highly visible, alarmed, lighted, temperature-controlled, and 24/7 monitored outdoor cabinets provide immediate visibility and access to life-saving AEDs. Stop the bleed kits, Narcan, and other emergency supplies. They are ideal for parks, athletic fields, trails, schools and universities, marinas, business districts, and any outdoor locations where people congregate. Click on www.saveheart.life for more information. SaveHeart Stories is a presentation of SaveHeart by Heart Nation.